Welcome to Legacy Cast, your source for hearing from top influencers and industry experts and successful business owners who are telling their unique story about life, values, goals, business strategies, and the various causes they are so passionate about. Future generations will come to be impacted by what is happening today, whether positive or negative, and our mission is to focus on what is going to affect change for the better. Hosted each weekday by James Snow, a former U.S. Army combat medic, now founder and principal advisor of James Advisors Group, a full-service financial planning firm in North Texas. This is Legacy Cast. Welcome, Legacy Cast listeners. This is your host, James Snow. Welcome you to the program today. And I have Joe Phelan with me today. He's a fellow Army guy, so lovingly say hua to my brother there on the other end of this. And Joe is also a podcaster, so that's something that's kind of cool. I like to, on occasion, bring in other guys that are doing sort of the same thing because we like to get our word out and sort of touch on different things that are important in the world. But here on Legacy Cast, obviously we talk about things that are important to other people, and that's what we'll be talking with Joe today about. But so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Joe to the program. Welcome, bud.
Thanks so much for having me.
And now, just kind of to touch on the point of legacy, like I always tell people, it means something different to every person. For me, it tends to lean, to the slant of, more of your financial legacy. What are you doing to set up your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and so on. But what does it mean to you personally?
Personally, I think legacy is what's obviously left behind after you're gone. So in my perspective right now, I am not anyone who's speaking as a person who has a legacy. I am 26 years old. I've been doing my business for about 3 years now. I am a snake breeder, podcaster, YouTuber, as well as I have my own media company and I edit podcasts. And basically what I do is try every day just to do the best I can. And slowly with my business, I've kind of narrowed it down into what I'm most passionate about, what I most like. And I believe creating a legacy is taking the steps every single day to get better at your craft or whatever it is. And it takes some sort of focus, at least in my experience so far, to really leave something better than you found it.
Yeah, it's well put. I'm kind of surprised to hear the combination of snake breeder and media company, though. But I guess on some level, that probably does work together.
Yeah, so how it started is I didn't really set out to start a media company. I made my own media for my business, for my snake breeding business, and quietly morphed into something that people started paying me for. So someone started paying me to do commercial videos because they saw my YouTube videos. And then I decided, hey, that's a decent pivot point for me to go on and at least make some money while I am breeding snake, because snakes is my passion. It's my first love, I guess you could say. And therefore, it's not always monetarily fruitful. So pivoting and being open to pivoting to doing the media stuff. And now I edit videos and I edit podcasts. That's mostly what I do is post-production. And so that's kind of how that happened. I know it seems unlikely, but it's just something that kind of naturally came about.
It's kind of interesting story there. And, obviously I have to ask the obvious question of, that everyone asks, how many times you've been bit?
I get bit almost every day just because I have a bunch of babies. And when babies are first hatched, they are super, super sketchy because they are afraid of everything. If you think about it, a baby snake, especially the ones I work with, are about as big as an earthworm. And as you know, about everything eats an earthworm. So about everything will eat a baby snake. So they come out defensive because that's the only way that they can survive in the wild. And therefore, though it doesn't hurt or it never breaks the skin, they still bite me almost every day. At least the babies do. The adults, not so often.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to hear. That's one of my big phobias. So I had to get that out there and get that out of my head that how many times you're getting bit. Because that's just, that's my mental picture is, kind of like the picture that I see on the screen over your shoulder there is, that's the image that comes to my mind. A big mouth open coming at me.
I think one of the things that I get a lot is like, oh, you seem so normal until you hear about the snake. To me, it doesn't go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be some crazy person to work with snakes or to appreciate snakes. And just like any other fear, most fears are irrational, right? Meaning that there's no severe consequences, unless obviously it's a venomous snake. Stay away from that. Mm-hmm. But fear is mostly irrational. And once you push past that, I mean, you realize how simple and calm and everything my snakes are. And if you held one, I think your mind would change over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, podcasting and doing, videos and lives and, different things of that sort. And even the seminars that I do, that's sort of people that know me really well know that I'm also very shy. So, that's when you're saying, the irrational fears, it's kind of interesting that, you point that out, because that is true. This is sort of my therapy is, it gets me over something that otherwise, by nature, I would certainly not, put myself out there publicly and, on recording this there for till the end of time,
and it's also, it's also like your fear may be snakes, but I'm probably just as afraid of my taxes as you are snakes. And I'm sure you're cool with doing all your financial stuff. And it's like, that's so burdensome to me. So
yeah. Good point there. So do you feel personally, Joe, that people should actively consider what they're doing that's going to impact their legacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should have in some way enough respect for yourself to want to leave an impact on the world, because that's what makes you happy. I mean, it sounds good that, yeah, people after you and your family will remember you for something, but then again, and it's easy to do that in the reptile industry. There's like legends of the reptile industry and stuff like that. And of course and there is that in every field, and you want to get on that pedestal. You want to be one of those guys, but more importantly, you want to just make sure that you're making everyone around you better, and then you surround yourself with people that make you better as well.
Yeah, good point. So how do your views on your own personal legacy affect what you do with your business?
It affects me in the way that I really want to make sure that right now I'm working in development with a product. We are making it in the only certified organic animal bedding and cocoa peat. So the cocoa peat we'll use for plants as well as animal bedding. And we've been getting them in. My partner he's a biologist, but he also owns a family farm in India that does coconuts. And I've been getting in bales of this coconut bedding, and every time I probably drive him crazy. I say, this is unacceptable. That's wrong. This is wrong. I'm not going to sell this yet, blah, blah, blah. And he probably hates me, but it matters to me because my name matters in the industry. And once you get a mark on your name in the industry, it's hard to kind of make up for it. So if there's any little inconsistency with the product, I believe that goes back on me and ultimately affects my legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I like that you're kind of putting it in those terms, because, that's a very, very real, very visible, definition of, kind of how legacy works. Is that, with our name, it's something that it's very, very, very personal. It's something that we should cherish. And, your good name is hard to get back once you lose it. And so, everything that we do, personally and with business, we should be mindful, I think, be deliberate in what we're doing, like what you're mentioning there with that project with the cocoa peat, that, you're very mindful and deliberate of what's going on there, because how that's going to reflect backwards. And so, it's certainly something that is very important, in the big picture.
Absolutely. And there's a rule in marketing called the 8-to-1, to where if something happens, if you do a great job, one person will leave a review or talk about it or tell a friend about it. If you do something to the negative side, 8 people will leave a review or talk about it. So the fact is that the negative things you do, the things that you don't follow through on as far as possible, are 8 times more likely to come back to you and more impactful, which is kind of unfortunate, but you got to be cognizant always of what you're putting out there and always put out a great product.
Yeah. And, I certainly want to, give you kudos, at 26, being able to, to have that kind of a mindset, kudos to you for that one, because, I was much older than that before I started thinking, with, the bigger picture kind of stuff, at 25, 26, I was still, seeking adrenaline. So.
Well, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert at monitoring this whole thing and mapping out everything, because I still struggle often with, staying on the path, focusing, doing what I have to do, not getting caught up in other things. I mean, I am definitely no expert in this. I'm definitely no one who's talking from up on the hill who's successful yet. I wouldn't consider myself successful yet, but I just try every day to somehow get to that point and get a little bit better and a little bit more focused. And I mean, I keep snakes that keep me on my toes, so I get my share of adrenaline that way as well.
Yeah, and former MP, so hey, I guess you know a little bit about adrenaline there. So from a CEO standpoint, with either of your businesses, what would be maybe a couple things that keep you up at night that you think about as far as improving or changing or doing differently?
Really, right now, I'm going through the process of hiring my first employee. And I do have someone who I contract out some editing jobs and stuff to. And then I have another one that's more full-time. And just me not getting frustrated is really hard, because I really love that control. I really want things done exactly how I would do them. And quite frankly, being in the military as a squad leader, what I would do is, this is what we do, this is how we get it done, and we get it done without any questions. And that's not really how real life works, for better or worse. In real life, you have to manage your employees. You need to let them know your expectations. You need to constantly communicate. And I've been finding that it's almost harder to manage the employees than it is to just do the work myself. But I don't have the time to do my work all by myself at this point. So that's really, really been a struggle lately.
Yeah, I can certainly relate with that one, because I try to control everything with my business, and it's not always the best thing. There comes a time where, as a business owner, you have to delegate and take your hands off of the pet projects, because we look at our business, it's almost like our baby in a way, and we don't want to hand our baby to somebody that isn't going to handle them the same way that we handle them. But at the same time, we have to realize we have to look at it in a results based viewpoint as opposed to a process based. And just trust the other person to get to achieve it may not be the course that we would have taken, but to achieve the result that we want, and let them take their course, and then it becomes better for it when we're able to do that.
Absolutely.
But it's certainly part of the journey as well.
It's the only way that you can grow. I mean, it's a hindrance if you don't do so, and there's no way to scale your own self. And what are you going to do? Right. Not sleep? Or eventually you get to this point, and I think, I don't know, it's been a struggle to get past that.
Yeah, I understand. So do you believe it's important that people create strategies and processes for themselves, both in a personal life and a business life?
I can't say that I am that by the book. That makes it sound like very planned out, your process of doing everything. I haven't gotten to that point where I have processes within my breeding business, within how I clean things, how I do things, just from a standpoint of that's going to save me a lot of time. I haven't done a great job of creating processes in other aspects of my business. I'm still working on that, like I said, with the employees. But it's definitely important to save your time and also not always I find myself pulled in way too many directions, right? So there's like something going crazy over here, something going crazy over here between the two businesses. And I think that it's important, but I can't say that I've mastered that.
No, fair point. So what would you say, maybe just from your observation, are some of the reasons that other businesses, end up failing? Would you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there's a few things. It's that people are unwilling to pivot. So if I was so focused on just making a living with snakes, I would not have the open-mindedness to be able to pivot into media. I'm not blindly going after one thing, but I'm keeping open, the things that could happen. So it's the ability to pivot, but it's also the ability to just not give up. And it's corny, but you just have to keep on going. It's usually not the people who are successful are usually not the ones who had it made for them. They're not the ones who were lucky, any of that. It's really that they hit all the stuff that everyone hits, I think, in business, and they just kept going, or they were resourceful with what they were giving. A bad situation happened and they dealt with it. They didn't dwell on it. They didn't waste time. They took action and just never gave up.
Yeah. So what maybe are some of the roadblocks and or resources that you would advise people to be mindful of and take advantage of?
So definitely a resource would be, I never had a calendar before, but when you start getting really busy, like when you really need to have things allotted on a calendar, you can't be messing around with going all over the place. And that's something that I never kept in my life. And I just recently started probably 4 months ago or so. And it's made all the difference, whether it's, booking people for the podcast and knowing what's going on, but that's also kind of like a micro goal setting technique, I guess you could say, because it said that I get this done then, that done there. And it keeps me on path when I have a lot of different things going on. And roadblocks is that that plan's going to change too, because things are going to happen. The guy who I pay, something happened with Western Union and all that, and I need to figure out how to wire transfer to a Middle Eastern country and randomly at 10 a.m. in the morning, and then I'm there for half the day and go, damn, that calendar just obliterated. And I can't be mad that happened either, I got to keep on going too.
That's true. So how would you say that your personal values and belief systems play a role in what you do in business?
It's huge. Kind of like I mentioned before. I mean, I just want to put out good things, and I want to be the real deal per se. I don't want to be, there's too many people in every side of business that don't necessarily practice what they preach. They may tell you something and they're doing the opposite, or someone who, you get this all the time in the kind of self-help groups and stuff like that. Since we're both in like vetrepreneur groups and stuff like that, you get a lot of people who are acting as experts but haven't really done the thing. I want to be the person who has done the thing, and then later I can tell people this is how I did it, and there's no roadmap to this. Everyone's got their own path, but this is how I did it, and most importantly, we just kept going.
Sure. So what's something that you might wish that you had done a little bit differently that you've seen sort of, the hindsight's 2020? Is there something in particular?
There are definitely things as far as snakes go, but that's super, super specific to me. But I did have, this thing where I originally built up a collection, and then I built it up so quick that I wasn't able to manage things like illness in my collection and stuff like that. So I originally, when I actually dropped out of college to breed snakes, which, obviously made my mom cry a lot. And so I had built up a collection at that point of, maybe 30 or 40 animals. But when you have a bunch of animals at the same time, you can't properly, what we would call, quarantine all of them. And so one of the animals, at least one of the animals, had a virus that eventually spread to most of the collection that I had brought in at the time, which was rapidly expanding. So it ended up being like half my collection. And basically this virus, you can't, at least there's no way of curing it. And therefore my first few months of me deciding this is what I'm going to do, I basically lost everything. And that's something, and it really took me a while to get that back, to get that motivation back. I mean, by a while, I mean, like, I didn't start building my collection back up to where it was. And I totally changed what I worked with until maybe 2 to 3 years after. So that was a huge point and huge learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as, since you're a veteran, we'll kind of touch on a couple questions there. How did you personally face the transitioning portion there, and then going into entrepreneurship? How did you handle that transition?
Probably about as terrible as everyone else does. I mean, it's really difficult. But one thing that I maintained in the Army, and which I see a lot of people do, which is very dangerous, is they kind of build their whole persona or their whole self-worth, or they are a soldier, or they are the Army per se. Like, and then when you lose all of that, then suddenly you're left empty and you don't feel like anything, and you don't have any meaning, you don't have any direction to go in. But I never saw myself as just a soldier. I was always trying to learn and be an entrepreneur while I was in the Army. And I knew that, hey, I'm going to do my time. I'm going to do this 6 years. And after that, it's total fair game. And that was like taking off the governor and saying, I can go full bore now. So I think it's important not to build your skills outside of, say, the military, and not let that be your full identity.
Sure. Yeah, and fair point there, because a lot of our brothers is we come back to the world, and I struggled with this. Is you come back to the civilian world, and you really don't fit in. You remember all the same faces, all the same sights and sounds and everything. It was all the same, but you're different, and you just don't really fit in the way that you did before. And it's like your self identity is kind of turned upside down. And
it's like you go through normal life, and then you randomly meet that veteran somewhere, and then you're like, oh, it's like the puzzle pieces going together, and there's not many people who you can connect with after that, because you have this weird shared experience that less than 1% of the population has or something, and there's just something to it, and there's not many ways to replace it, which is the hard part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Very true. So was it obvious to you, or did you kind of stumble upon the answers of how you transitioned?
Oh, no, nothing was ever obvious. I think what I did was I failed a lot. I mean, what I did first is I was a security guard. I was a logistics broker. I was a, what do you call it? I think it's Postmates driver. I delivered food. Basically, I just did a whole bunch of things and realized I hated a whole bunch of things while I was building my businesses and stuff on the side. But it was never an obvious, I can do this. I can make it a full-time business. I was confident and I wanted to do it, but it wasn't like it was so obvious out in front of me or anything. I can only really connect it going backwards. I don't know exactly what's in front of me.
Mm-hmm. So when you started the media part of your company, let's kind of talk about how you got started on that. That's an interesting side of your business, doing the media part. So maybe talk me through some of that process.
So the whole thing behind why I started the media is that my business, I wanted to make sure that if I'm going to produce animals, I'm going to be able to find qualified homes for them. I'm going to be able to sell them kind of at ease. And I kind of set up a boutique style of business as far as reptile breeding goes. So, there's a few ways to go about it. You can wholesale animals and work with very high numbers, or you can keep a smaller number of animals and really focus on the quality and the marketing and everything behind it. So I knew I wanted to start this boutique kind of business. And I knew that if I did that, I would need to market. And I knew that marketing in this age is podcasting, is YouTube, it is Instagram. So I started going really hard on all the social platforms because I knew that that would open up opportunities as far as my business goes. And then obviously it opened up other opportunities along the way. And then I try to pass that on to other entrepreneurs who are trying to get their foothold in the social game. So, there's no one really putting out newspaper ads anymore. You got to find a way to find your audience. And a lot of times that route is through the internet, through social platforms. People want to people hate social media. You'll hear a lot of people resist, but quite frankly, it's what's effective. And it may seem like too much time to take out, but it's slowly turning into, the most impactful thing you can do for your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair point there. Excuse me. So what compelled you to go into the snake business?
I don't know. It's something that I think it's important to look back on things that got you excited as a kid to kind of get a glimpse of what you're going to do in the future. So as a kid, luckily I was at the age where Steve Irwin came on the scene pretty much when I was elementary school. And he was obviously over the top character. And I don't get that from him. My personality is nowhere close to that. But it was something where his passion was just contagious for that and for the animals and everything like that. So I was just in love with snakes. My dad actually kept snakes since the 70s. So we had always at least a couple in the house. And honestly, my dad worked a lot. And one of the only things we did was go to reptile shows on the weekends and keep snakes together and stuff like that. And then as far as the media goes, I was making videos also. I made like a t-shirt company in middle school, and then I sponsored skateboarders and we made skate videos and stuff like that. So it's kind of a mesh of things that I did when I was little and somehow find a way as an adult to do these things and find joy in what I do for a living.
That's cool. Yeah, it's good to, do the things that you love because, like the saying goes, if you do what you love, then you never really work a day in your life. And so, following your passion is really a huge, the huge key to success and to really joy and happiness, I think.
Absolutely. And I think it's also a thing to where some days it does feel like work. Some days you don't want to do, there's constantly people messaging you about sales or doing stuff like that. It's not always the animals. Yeah. It's the sales I have to do. It's just the one-on-one interactions, just constantly talking to people. And I'm not a very, you may be mistaken throughout me talking on podcasts and stuff, but I'm actually not that outgoing. I'm pretty introverted. So sometimes it's a challenge for me to keep it going through social and stuff like that. So it's not always, because when you start a business, it's not always what you think it's going to be, as far as you end up wearing so many different hats. And it's not only playing with snakes, it's also selling snakes and talking to customers and helping them out.
Well, that's true. So is there any other kind of profession out there that you would entertain doing at some point?
I don't want to ever say never because I kind of follow what catches my interest. So I actually had someone on my podcast who was talking about making planted enclosures for snakes and stuff like that. So yesterday I started going down this crazy rabbit hole of finding plants that I could put in enclosures and plant stuff. So who knows, I may be selling plants in 5 years or something, but quite frankly, it's not going to be a profession. It's hard for me to fit into a certain box. I don't think I'll ever be the 9 to 5. I've tried that a bunch and it hasn't really worked out. I think I never get fired, but I quit pretty, my tolerance is low for doing things over and over again and monotony and stuff like that. And I think that's probably the same with a lot of people in the military. Part of why you like going in the military is that things are usually always different, even though people think that it's so regimented and so strict. There's this weird flexibility of decision making and getting things done, like things that you would never expect to be able to do in weird ways, but you get the job done, and every day's different.
No, that's true. That's very true. So what would you say is your greatest character strength?
My greatest character strength, I would think, would be, and it's so corny, it comes back to like basic training and stuff, but it's doing things right even when people aren't looking. So it's knowing that I'm always doing the right thing and what's best, not only for myself, but for other people and for the customers, even when they're not looking. So if I try to sell you on something, especially with social media, I see it all the time because some people say, hey, I'll make this video for you. You're going to get 1 million views. You're going to do all this. Listen, I'm going to make a video for you, but all it is one at bat, because you need to take 365 at bats. You need to be taking swings every single day in order to get successful. There's not a magic pill. If I may sell more videos if I say I'm going to do that, but quite frankly, more often than not, I'm going to fall short because the algorithm doesn't lend to people just putting out one video once a year. The algorithm likes consistency. The algorithm likes very compelling content, and you got to always be putting out content and doing that. So it's always having a level of just the fact that you're always going to do the right thing or be honest with people generally.
And the flip side of that coin for the next question, what would you say is your greatest weakness then?
My greatest weakness is communication, which is why I suck at communicating with my employees right now. I suck at keeping up with talking to everyone everywhere because my attention is all over the place. So trying to streamline that kind of stuff is definitely my weakness. And I'm not sure if at one point I'm just going to have someone help me to do that or I'm going to strengthen it. I'm not really sure my best mode of doing that because sometimes it gives me life to talk to people, especially about snakes. Like it really keeps me going. And then sometimes when enough's enough, I may need sometimes I ask my girlfriend to go in, she needs to come off the bench and answer some messages and stuff like that because I'm just overwhelmed, so it's definitely communication in one form or another.
Yeah, I can relate with that one. So as far as with your brainstorming and getting ideas, is there a particular place you go to, going out in nature, walking, jogging, or, a certain spot in the house that you go to get your ideas?
Yeah, I find that it's really hard to get ideas with a busy mind. And I'm always busy, but you need to find those spots to get that kind of clear your mind. So usually I use exercise. So I'm not going to do an hour of doing nothing, but I may take a 20-minute run and then I will, and that's usually out in nature on trails or something like that. Even though I live in Philadelphia city limits, I can find a trail and a park to go hang out in. And it's usually just sitting on a rock, or while running, I'll get ideas and stuff like that, or sitting on a rock, just watching nature, and I'll write a lot of my scripts and stuff like that. I'll do that in that space. It's hard for me to sit down and force myself to get good stuff out, which I have to do sometimes, but that's the way I prefer it, is kind of being in nature, getting your body moving, and then kind of calming your mind.
Sure. So if you're describing what you do with your business at a very high level, from the business owner standpoint, assuming, hypothetically that there's somebody listening that wants to go into the same kind of business that you're doing, how would you describe that?
Man, well, it's hard because it's not like I think everyone's situation is going to be different. And I don't think there's one way to do things. And I don't think I have the best way to do things. But just being me is just trying to do everything at this point. I don't have the employees knocked down or anything like that. I don't have everything down. So it's just, if I was to explain it to someone, it's like just constantly swimming upstream in rapids. I mean, I'm just constantly being hit from all angles with everything. And I have to do all those things, especially as a small business owner. I think you got to be ready to do everything. I mean, I got to, like I was talking about before, I got to do my QuickBooks and I got to put my expenses on there. I got to do all that stuff myself. And it's definitely hard. It's not, I think a lot of people go into business for this leisurely life. I think they want the freedom to create their own schedule. Quite frankly, my schedule is I wake up to when I go to sleep, and that's my work schedule. And most of the time, that's every day of the week. I don't have the ability yet to take off after 9 to 5 or to take off the weekend. Most of the times, I'm just working. So I don't know if that's a negative to people trying to get into it, but I mean, that's what it takes. And I enjoy it, but you got to be willing to do that.
Well, and that's part of the reality of, when you're starting a business is, as an entrepreneur, especially, probably the first, call it 3 years or so, it's definitely going to look like that, you're not going to have as much, you time as, you would think. It sounds really sexy, to be an entrepreneur, but truth be told, there's a whole lot that goes into it in the very beginning. And then, slowly over time, as the processes and the procedures kind of get worked out, and then you start outsourcing certain things that you discover, really I'm worth more than what I can pay somebody to do that thing for me. And so you start outsourcing. And then, once that happens, then you kind of discover, a little bit more time. And then before long, it kind of works itself out. But, especially in the very beginning, it is like what you're experiencing, that, you're doing a lot of the business stuff, from, dusk till dawn, so to speak.
Well, I look forward to it.
Yeah. So kind of in winding up, what is something this is sort of my trivia question that I end the program with. What's something about you that most people don't know?
Oh man, it's hard because I try to put so much out there and I try to let people know. I think that's part of my whole strategy is getting people to know exactly what I feel, exactly what I think. That's part of the authenticity that works on social media. But definitely something that people don't know, I think, is that I'm never satisfied, and I'm very scared that I will never, ever be satisfied. I think that's what drives me in the business. And it's also going to be an Achilles heel because I don't know if I'll ever be satisfied with where I am. I don't think I'll ever think I'm successful. And that seems scary. It pumps me up in a weird way because I know that I'll keep on going, hopefully, until I die or otherwise. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's my greatest strength. It's my greatest fear. And it's my greatest ally and greatest enemy all at the same time.
Yeah, and that's certainly a good trait to have, though, because that means that the quality of what you do and the quality of the life that you're going to live is always going to be at its upper level. When you're never satisfied with anything less than the best. That's a good trait. Well, Joe, I appreciate you certainly taking time out of your schedule to be able to be with us today. And I want to give you an opportunity to let the listeners know how they can get a hold of you, though, because they with your media business and the snake breeding business, there's going to be people that are interested in it. So how do they get a hold of you?
Awesome. I appreciate you having me on the show. And my info is my snake breeding business is called Port City Pythons. So it's Port City Pythons, pretty much YouTube, Instagram, portcitypythons.com. as well as, and that's also Facebook, all that good stuff. My name is Joe Phelan. Just find me on Facebook. Joe, last name Phelan, which I know is confusing. And then also atroxmedia.com. So Atrox Media is going to be the media arm of my company. What I do is, I don't know if you know Donnie's Success Champions. I actually edit Donnie's podcast. He's a fellow veteran. And I obviously have my own podcast. And what I do is produce podcasts and edit podcasts, as well as post-production on videos. So I'll edit social media videos. I'll shoot some and all that good stuff. Yes. So you can check me out pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, and Donnie's a good friend of mine, so yeah, good stuff going out there. So for all the listeners here, reach out to Joe either through either of the two websites that he's got going, and take advantage of his his skill, his experience, and what he has to offer you, because it's certainly something that can help get you to the next level. And like I enjoy telling all of my guests, I will see you around the bend, my friend.
Thanks, brother.
You've been listening to Legacy Cast. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to come back next time as we speak with more top influencers, industry experts, and business owners from around the world.